The orbital station Zenith's edge hummed with the usual cacophony of 100 species conducting their business. James Mercer leaned against the observation deck railing, nursing a cup of terrible synthetic coffee, watching cargo haulers drift past like metallic whales in the void. He'd been a freight inspector for 3 years now. Boring work. But it paid the bills and kept him far from Earth's overcrowded cities. That's when she crashed into him. The girl couldn't have been more than 8 years old by human standards, though James knew better than to assume age across species. Her scales shimmered iridescent blue-green under the station's lights, and her eyes, vertically slitted like a cat's, were wide with terror. Small horns curved back from her temples, and a thin tail wrapped around her leg protectively. "Please," she gasped in heavily accented standard. "They hurt my mother. You help." "You human." James knelt down, hands raised non-threateningly. He recognized her species, Drakari, one of the most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. Their empire spanned 40 systems, and they didn't take kindly to interference in family matters. But the desperation in the child's face cut through every diplomatic concern. Hey, it's okay. I'm James. What's your name?" "Orla." She grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength, her claws pricking through the fabric. "My mother, the Empress, they poison her. The regents. They want Father's throne. They say I am too young, too weak. But I am not weak." Her voice cracked on the last word, and James saw something flicker in her eyes, something ancient and dangerous. Before he could respond, 3 Drakari males rounded the corner, their ceremonial armor marking them as royal guards. The lead one, his scales a deep crimson, pointed at Orla with a clawed finger. "The princess will return to the Drakari quarter immediately. This does not concern humans." James stood slowly, positioning himself between Orla and the guards. Every instinct screamed at him to back down. These weren't just guards, they were trained warriors from a species that had conquered worlds before humanity had learned to make fire. But he'd seen enough bullies in his life to recognize them in any form. "The kid came to me for help. That makes it my concern." The crimson Drakari's eyes narrowed. "You dare?" "Yeah, I dare." James kept his voice level. "Station law says anyone can request asylum. She's requesting. You got a problem. Take it up with Administrator Chen." For a moment, James thought the guard would attack. The Drakari's hand moved to the plasma weapon at his hip. Then Orla stepped out from behind James, and something changed. Her scales began to darken, deep violet energy crackling along their edges. Her pupils dilated until her eyes were pools of midnight. And when she spoke, her voice resonated with harmonics that made James's teeth ache. "My mother's blood runs in my veins. My father's fire burns in my heart. And you dare threaten one who helps me?" The temperature around them dropped 10 degrees. "I am Orla Vexitharian, Crown Princess of the 70 Flames, and my combat protocols are awake." The guard stumbled backward. James had heard rumors, whispered stories in station bars about Drakari combat protocols. Ancient genetic programming that transformed their young into living weapons when threatened. It was supposed to be a myth, a boogeyman story to keep other species in line. But watching Orla's small form surrounded by that eerie violet glow, James knew it was real. "We must report this," the Crimson Guard hissed, and they retreated quickly down the corridor. As soon as they disappeared, Orla's glow faded. She swayed, and James caught her before she fell. Her scales had returned to their normal blue-green, and she looked like a frightened child again. "Sorry," she whispered. "Did not mean to scare you, but they would have hurt you." "Kid, you didn't scare me." James smiled despite the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "But we need to move. They'll come back with more guards, maybe station security." "You said your mom was poisoned?" Orla nodded. "In the Drakari quarter. The regents control everything there now, but I escaped through the ventilation. Mother told me if ever in danger, find a human. She said humans are stubborn like Korath beetles. They do not quit." James couldn't help but laugh. Comparing humans to beetles wasn't the most flattering comparison, but he'd take it. "All right, Princess. Let's get you somewhere safe, then figure out how to help your mom." He led Orla through the station's maintenance corridors, areas he'd learned during his inspections. As they walked, she told him everything. The conspiracy among the regents, the slow-acting poison that had weakened the Empress, the plan to eliminate the royal family and install a puppet government. It was a tale as old as civilization itself, just dressed in scales and starlight. They reached James's quarters, a modest two-room apartment near the station's outer ring. He locked the door and immediately sent an encrypted message to Administrator Chen. Whatever happened next, there would be a record of events. "Why do you help me?" Orla asked, perched on his worn couch, her tail curled around her. "You could be killed for this. Humans and Drakari are not allies." James set down his communicator and looked at the small girl who'd literally run into his life. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because you're a kid asking for help. And because, well," he grinned, "we humans are stubborn like Korath beetles. We don't quit." Orla's eyes widened, then she smiled, showing rows of tiny, sharp teeth. "Mother was right about humans. Your mom sounds smart." James pulled out his emergency medkit. "Now let's figure out how to save her." As alarms began blaring outside and heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor, James Mercer realized his boring life as a freight inspector had just become infinitely more complicated. But looking at Orla's hopeful face, he wouldn't have changed a thing. After all, humans might not have empires or ancient combat protocols. But they had something that had carried them from the caves to the stars, the stubborn, reckless courage to stand up when it mattered most. And right now, it mattered.